Welcome back, America. 21 minutes after the hour. It's Hugh Hewitt from Dallas talking this hour with Vince Flynn, America's preeminent thriller writer, the creator of Mitch Rapp. American Assassin, still in bookstores. If you haven't read it yet, you might be the only American who hasn't. You ought to go out and get it. Special limited editions available at vinceflynn.com. All right, Vince, I don't think some in the audience may not know that the reason Mitch Rapp is so successful is you work hard on the research. You know so many people in the community of special operators. You do so much time in and around them that you have a very unique perspective on what happened 2 weeks ago. Let's just start with the general question. Where were you? What did you think when the killing of bin Laden was announced?
We found out late Sunday night, not to name drop. I had just returned from our annual spring fling at Rush Limbaugh's joint with the Ailes family and the Michaels and the Ohlmeyers and Joel Cernow and Colleen, creator 24. And it's an interesting weekend to say the least. And got the news, and it was ecstatic, very happy. As the media began to fall all over themselves, I was horrified by several things. I mean, these are men and women who are, many of them have master's degrees in journalism from supposedly our finest schools, and they get paid to cover the Pentagon and the CIA. And I'm hearing them run around repeating things like 40 Navy SEALs raided the compound. And right away I'm saying to myself, that number doesn't work. I've never known the SEALs to work with a 40-man strike force. And then they're saying Black Hawk helicopters, and I didn't know about the stealth birds yet, but on missions like this at night, they fly Pavehawks, which, advanced avionics, nap of Earth flying, all this stuff. So they were getting all these little things wrong. And the one thing that I knew they weren't paying attention to was what led up to this, what had to have taken place on the ground. And in the last couple of weeks, I've filled in the blanks on it, and it's a pretty fascinating story, and one that I, for the most part, had right from the get-go. And it's that, the CIA, their National Clandestine Service, they've had guys on the ground in about since last August. Now, yep. I will give President Obama credit. He signed off on this. He said to these guys, the CIA came to him with the information on the couriers. And they said, we've tracked them to this compound. Here's what makes this compound interesting. It has no IT or no phone lines going into it, and it's the only house in the neighborhood that does not have phone lines or IT lines. So it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. It's got these unusually high walls, the whole deal. So what we do, and we do this very well, is the National Reconnaissance Office moves a satellite in overhead, and we start to monitor the place. And we notice that there's a guy that takes a walk on most afternoons in this joint, and the National Reconnaissance Office, nobody's giving them any, credit for this. These guys are so good, they figure out by the shadow how it falls from the sun at this time of the year that this guy that is taking these walks every day is over 6 feet tall. And he takes these walks by himself, paces back and forth. So they're starting to go, all right, this is interesting. So President Obama signs off, sends in the team, along with some guys that the CIA calls SAD, or Special Activities Division, and they're former Delta Force operators.
Okay.
And they go in as riding shotgun. These guys go in with the most advanced electronic surveillance equipment probably on the planet, at least in terms of what we have, which that's a risky thing. If this safe house goes down and anybody gets their hands on this stuff, who knows what's going to happen to it. They had micro drones that they did not use out of fear that they would lose one. It would fall into the compound in the middle of the night, and they'd wake up the next day and find it and blow the whole deal. So they start doing their surveillance. Here's the most interesting part that I've heard so far, and it's just common police work. One of the biggest breaks in the story came from the local grocer. They get to know the grocer. They start talking to the grocer about the neighborhood and what's going on and this and that. And the grocer ends up mentioning that he delivers food to this compound every week for 25 people. And they're not Pakistanis. They're all Arabs. And one of the women, in fact, dresses in the Yemeni fashion. And the CIA knows that Osama married a 14-year-old Yemeni bride 2 years ago. So all of this starts to kind of it gets pieced together into this intelligence mosaic where they're going, man, there are too many points here that are starting to line up. I originally was convinced that they had a voice print on him. And it was confirmed to me yesterday that they never got that voice print.
Let me ask you if you're surprised, Vince. In Memorial Day, in this very spooky foreshadowing, you have 3 bad guys on the ground, and they're ID'd. They're ID'd by satellite. Are you surprised that, we're supposed to be able to see the seams on a fastball? They couldn't get the facial on OBL from the bird?
No, because what I heard was they couldn't get the angle where he walked with these walls, and he wore his headdress, that they couldn't get the exact facial on him from up that high. And they were smart. They built this thing right. The CIA couldn't get an angle to get a photo into the compound. They handled this thing really coolly. They knew they had the couriers. So the question is he in there? And they just kept monitoring and monitoring. And again, one of the big tip-offs was this girl dressed in Yemeni garb.
Yeah.
How many Yemeni, she's 16 now or whatever, how many Yemeni women are in Abbottabad, Pakistan?
Yeah.
It's not a common thing, with a bunch of other Arabs behind a wall with no IT lines, no phone lines, walls that are built in such a way that nobody can see from, blocks away. So they just kept piecing it together. And the other thing that I find pretty interesting, it doesn't really surprise me, is I was told that near the end here, it was DCI Panetta and Secretary of State Clinton who pushed the hardest to not tell Pakistan, which I find fascinating.
I do. In fact, that's also Memorial Day, where you just cannot trust the ISI. You've got the Pakistani colonel, and they've got different divisions within it. And so they're the ones that went hard-nosed on that as opposed to Gates. I'm surprised by that, too. Okay.
Well, and so the pushback that I got, and it was a more generic sense, it was that the DOD pushback. Now, that doesn't mean Gates specifically. That could be individual secretaries. That could be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And if you understand our precarious supply lines in and out of Afghanistan, the DOD has every right to be the ones to be the most concerned if this relationship goes south.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of military personnel in Pakistan that are logistics people getting stuff, off of ships, overland, and into Afghanistan.
When we come back from the break, I'm going to talk about the specifics of the mission that night, what Vince Flynn thought about them as they've been revealed to us, and how he might fill in some of the details that are not being filled in, including, it wasn't just the SEALs. I talked with General Boykin last week. A lot of people involved in this operation. Vince Flynn knows that community. We'll talk about what he knows, what he suspects. Don't go anywhere, America, except maybe to vinceflynn.com. I'll be right back on The Hugh Hewitt Show. 34 minutes after the hour, America. It's Hugh Hewitt talking with Vince Flynn this hour, America's most successful writer of thrillers. He knows of which he speaks. American Assassin in bookstores now. vinceflynn.com. If you want to get a download of the first 100 pages of Memorial Day, just sign up at Facebook and over at vinceflynn.com, and you will be right in the thick of an operation so similar to this one. It's spooky. Time to talk about SEALs, Vince. I had a chance to see the SEAL movie, which the studios are falling over each other to get now. I've seen the print of it. And so I have a little bit better appreciation of how complex this is. But when I went back and read Memorial Day, you've got Air Force Special Tactics teams, you had Ranger battalions, you had SEALs, you had Delta involved. This operation, the Bin Laden kill team, it sounded just like SEALs, and that didn't sound right to me. What does it sound like to you?
Well, that was my confusion when they were throwing the 40 number out there. But here's where it does make sense. Let me back up a second. This unit, SEAL Team 6, Dev Group, whatever you want to call it, they keep changing the name, it falls under the command of what is called the Joint Special Operations Command. And attached to that is Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, the 1st Ranger Battalion, the 75th Rangers, and a bunch of other specialized groups, Air Force, Army, helicopter pilots, most famously. I knew right away that the guys who were flying these birds were more than likely the guys from SOAR, which is a Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the 160th, and that is where President Obama went last week to congratulate everybody. And these were the pilots who were featured in Black Hawk Down, by the way. These are the guys who wait until it's a stormy night and it's pouring rain, and they say, let's get in the helicopters and fly 50 feet off the ground. I mean, they're just amazing at what they do.